Hey guys, welcome to the MC Anime Podcast. We cover anime, geek culture, Japanese aesthetics, and Asian studies. We are a multi-fandom podcast, and you can expect to hear topics in your favorite hobby or fandom activity potentially. You can find MC Anime on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Also, please check out mcanimepodcast.com, our website. Furthermore, stay tuned in for another episode.
Alright guys, welcome to another episode of MC Anime. I'm MC Anime, and today we have another special guest with us today, Cheryl Ilov. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Pretty good. So, tell a little bit about yourself, where they can find you, and what you do.
Okay, I do a lot of things. And again, my name is Cheryl Ilov. You can find me, my website is just simply CherylIlov.com. You can also find me on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, as well as LinkedIn. And I am an author, a speaker. I'm also a physical therapist and a martial artist. So basically, I think the most compelling part of my story is that I began my martial arts training at the tender young age of 47. So martial arts was never on my radar. It was never anything that I wanted to do. I didn't go looking for the art. Mm-hmm. Basically, the art came looking for me. So I study, and I still train to this day. I study a martial art called Nenpō Taijutsu, which is based on the art of the ninja and the samurai. It's an ancient Japanese martial art that is, it's a little bit obscure. It's not real mainstream, so a lot of people haven't heard of it.
Yeah, and my experience with that actual martial art is typically the animation in the Japanese culture. I have a little bit of awareness about it. And I know some of the basics, but I don't know, like, a full-on detail. Mm-hmm. So, like, what's the main differences of traditional martial arts with motion tempo?
You know, I think that there's probably some similarities, like they always, have some things in common with martial arts. But I think what makes ours different is that we really go deep into the culture as well as the history of the art, and the traditions, the philosophy, and we focus a lot on training our spirit as well as training our bodies and our mindset and our, mental capacity and our mental toughness. So there's something about the art. It just encompasses all of that in a package that makes it so once you get started with the art, you just want to keep on going. Because believe me, I didn't even want to get started. It kind of fell in my lap.
Okay, so if you say it fell in your lap, how did that occur?
It started when I met a man. I was 44 years old, and I went to this guy who was an acupuncturist. So it was my first visit with this guy. He came highly recommended, and he had an acupuncture clinic. He also did something called shiatsu, which is a Japanese type of massage. And right next to his clinic was his dojo.
Oh,
so I wasn't even aware of that when I walked in for my first appointment. But, he seemed like a nice enough fellow. He was about 6 years older than me. And the very first time he put needles in my legs, he got a faraway look on his face. And he said, with your legs and my coaching, I could teach you how to kill with these things.
Okay, interesting.
Well, I wasn't interested. I was horrified.
Okay. Well, for anyone that doesn't...
I couldn't believe that anybody would actually think like that, have that mindset, let alone say it out loud to a perfect stranger.
So here's what I think is going through his head. When he's trying to do the acupuncture on your legs, he sees form, but he also sees the structure and how genetics is playing a role into like a warrior or fighter. So your legs are okay. So basically, anyone says anything like this, your arms and your legs and any weapon you have, in addition to your legs and arms, or in addition to your body. So, with your arms already being a weapon, you can actually hone those in and actually hone your skill to your particular fighting style.
Absolutely. And, we don't even talk about fighting style because we like to say that we don't fight. Ninjas are lovers.
Yeah.
We're, have a compassionate heart and spirit and all that stuff, but just don't cross the line. And one of the other things, I am a dancer, so he segued. I kept going back to him for acupuncture, even though I thought a couple of times about maybe not going anymore, because all he would ever talk about during my sessions was Nenpō Taijutsu, the art of the ninja, and how much he loved it. And he would go on and on and on about one point that everything's a weapon.
Yeah.
And that's when I really thought maybe the guy was crazy, because I thought, what do you mean everything's a weapon? But like you said, he saw that, our body is a weapon and can be used as one. But he would explain to me that even, routine household items can be used as a weapon. For example, yeah. Well, you know that.
Oh, yeah.
A broom handle, a toilet plunger. Yeah.
Just by the okay, so here's an interesting perspective. By the definition of the law, anything has the capacity to be a weapon. So the traditional weapons that we see are not necessarily weapons. It's how they're used. The people wielding them determines if it's a weapon or not. Just because you're a construction worker and you work with a sledgehammer does not mean that is necessarily a weapon. And yes, a sword and daggers and guns are typically used as weapons. Well, they're actually classified as weapons, actually, because of the deadly force that easily can be done with ease without... Sledgehammer has to have a lot of strength, and it's unconventional.
Well, but like you said, anything can be a weapon.
Yeah.
I even talked about one time after I got into my training and got really deep into it, and I started to see, oh my gosh, yeah, everything can be used as a weapon. But, even a smile can be a weapon. Even a look can be a weapon. But one of my favorite stories was how I was at the yarn shop. I'm a knitter. And I was looking for some new yarns, new projects to work with. And the women there knew that I was studying martial arts. And one of them said, I don't need martial arts. I don't need any self-defense. All I need to do is just take a knitting needle and shove it in the guy's ear. And I explained to her that there's a couple of things wrong with that idea. Number one, how are you going to know that you're going to have a knitting needle in your hand when you need it? Number two, how are you going to get it in a person's ear when they're trying to attack you? Are you going to ask them to hold still?
Yeah.
So I started to explain what much better targets would be, how to hold the knitting needle, where to attack, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, if you want an easy target, you have the neck. If it's sharp enough, the stomach, shins, if you have to do that, stuff like that. You want to immobilize the target first before actually going for the actual kill.
Right, exactly. But it was so funny because apparently everybody in the yarn shop just stopped and was listening to this little tirade. And finally, one of the women said, you've obviously given this a lot of thought. And I said, no, I really haven't. But she just mentioned it, and it started to get me thinking. So it does change your way of thinking.
Yeah.
In every situation.
Yeah. So, I guess not every time do you have a knitting needle, but there is an unconventional item that has the potential of, especially metal.
Yep. Well, even an ink pen, you can
there's lots of stuff.
An airplane with a high quality ink pen and you're just fine. But for heaven's sake, you can't bring a bottle of water because that might be used as a weapon. But imagine what you could do with that ink pen. But but that's okay. And even when I was flying a lot, it was about 10 years ago, I was flying a lot to go back home. My parents were both sick at the same time, and I was traveling with my knitting all the time.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of the other passengers would be surprised and say, they let you on the plane with the knitting needles? And I said, I didn't make the rules. I just follow them.
Well, yeah, because it's unconventional.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, well, water is not necessarily a weapon. Water is like a tool that can aid you to distract the opponent or disorient them. So the only way that water is like a weapon in a way is like high pressured or something like that. Like directly.
Or frozen.
Yeah, or frozen. Definitely frozen water. That packs a punch.
Yes. It certainly does. I've never tried it, but it certainly does.
Also, just because if you have a sock and some change, you got a good weight and a good flexible tool that actually can make a really great what's it called? What's the type of weapons? Swing weapon? Yeah.
It's the one with the chains and the weight on the end of it. I
kunai.
can't even remember.
Maybe that kunai or something like that.
Everybody disappears from the dojo when we play with that weapon because it's very, very painful. But it's so funny that you should bring that story up because I have a friend who's about my age, a little bit older than me, and he was a small kid and he was bullied a lot growing up. And he had a paper route. And this was back in the day that everybody would pay, the paper boy with money, real money. And he always had a lot of change in the bag because, they'd tell him keep the change or whatever. And he was walking on the way, doing his route, and one of the bullies approached him. And he was, threatening to take his money. And he said something snapped in him, his like that red, bull, reaction. And he just he realized he was holding this bag of change. And he grabbed the bag and started swinging it and had it over his head and was ready to get this guy and smack him right across the temple with the bag of change. And there was another young boy there that stopped him. And he says, you don't want to do it this way.
Yeah.
He says, you're really going to hurt him and you're going to get into a lot of trouble.
Yep.
But it was just at that moment he realized he had an incredibly powerful weapon to protect himself with.
Well, how about this? The person that stopped him, self-control. That is one thing you need to do with any fighting stances or any discipline that makes you defend yourself. You defend yourself first, not attack people because you can.
Right, exactly. And that, again, is part of our philosophy is that, we're peace-loving people. We don't want to fight. We don't like conflict. Our approach is to, avoid it and remove ourselves from a situation that could escalate. But if the person is continuing to come toward us and continuing to threaten us, we never throw the first strike punch.
And what are some preventive stances or moves that you have been taught first to do if you're not in immediate danger?
Well, we're always taught to stand, with our knees soft, so we're not in a locked position, so we are able to move at a moment's notice. And the very first thing that they teach us as a brand new student is how to avoid an attack, how to get out of the way, because you can't get hurt if you're not in the way. So when you see a situation that looks like it might be unsafe or precarious or might escalate, immediately just, use your intuition, use your ability to move and just get out of the way and go to a safe place. If you're at a position where you can't really move out of the way and, move physically to another another spot, we're taught how to just like turn our bodies in certain ways. So if a person tries to land a punch, they miss us, but with all of the force of the punch, that person's momentum is still going forward, and they beat themselves up with that type of, they're attacking themselves basically.
Yeah, because typically when you go for a punch, you put all your momentum in it, and you can also, if they continue trying to punch you, one way is to step back and just enough to dodge it, and then they push themselves forward, and then they either fall or they lose balance because maybe they put way too much. The same thing with any weapon too. If any sword or anything, if it's like a broadsword or something, you can actually use that to your advantage.
And we actually do a lot of sword evasion in our art. So we do practice a lot of different sword cuts of the swordman coming after you and slicing in a variety of different ways. So we practice how to get away from that, how to evade and then roll away to create distance. So that when we first learned this, I thought it was so stupid because, like I said, I fell into martial arts. I did not go willingly, and I was just in it to take a few classes, and then learn a few self-defense techniques, and then move on with my life because this was not something I was very interested in at all. But I did want to learn a few self-defense techniques. So when they started taking out the bamboo sword and start swinging at us, I thought, this is so juvenile and silly. Why am I doing this and why am I here? But, of course, I had to do it if I was going to be in class. And it's interesting because it does have very practical implications. If somebody's coming at you slicing with a knife or a baseball bat or some other type of a stick or some other type of weapon, you could always go into one of those evasion techniques.
True. And have you to use the evasion techniques at all? Or you not have the opportunity, like in a real situation?
I get that question a lot, and I like to say that yes, I have used it, but not in the way that people might think. So I've never had to pull out my bag of tricks or my technique or have to stop people or counterattack or anything like that. But I've done it in a way that's a lot more subtle, like if to get myself out of certain situations, certain relationships. I just use the skills that I learned through Nenpō to be able to, it's almost like, verbal judo.
Okay.
Or, a form of taking control of the situation and turning it to my advantage. So those are some of the skills that I never expected to learn. But no, I have never had to physically actually do it, although that's still up in the air.
True.
There is somebody that's, there's somebody on my radar several years ago that did something that if he ever does it again, it's not gonna be pretty for him.
Okay. So what did you feel like to be like the first women to have a black belt in that dojo?
And that was the funniest. That's probably the funniest and most amazing part of my story is that when I went into the dojo, like I said, I didn't go willingly. I was kind of dragged kicking and screaming along the way. It took my sensei, my acupuncturist, 3 years to convince me to even take a class. After 3 years of him badgering me, I finally said, okay, I will take a few classes just to prove to you how much I'm going to hate it, and then I'll quit. And when I went into this, I wasn't in it for the long haul. I wasn't in it for the black belt. I didn't want a black belt. I didn't even want a yellow belt. I didn't even want the white belt, but the white belt came with the uniform, so I had to take it. But I had no desire to climb up through the ranks, absolutely none. And even just for my yellow belt, one of the guys badgered me into testing. And a lot of times, I was the only woman in class most of the time. So I was definitely outnumbered and definitely out of my comfort zone. So he badgered me into testing for the yellow belt, and finally, just to shut him up, I tested for my yellow belt. 3 months later, the same guy badgered me to test for my second-degree yellow belt. It's like, my goodness, why don't you just mind your own business and go away? So I tested for my second-degree yellow belt, and then about 6 months after that, I was ready to test for my next level, and nobody had to badger me. Nobody had to talk me into it. It was my idea.
Oh, okay. So if you didn't get badgered to try different belts, you have not necessarily been able to advance as quickly. It would take a lot longer.
Probably, because there was no way I was going to do it. I mean, I even made that perfectly clear that I wasn't in this for the long run and I was never going to test. So it would have taken me even longer than it actually did.
So
but once I got, go ahead.
What's it about the belts that like just hooked you in the wrong way? Like, what did you have against the belts?
It wasn't necessarily what I had against belts. It was basically what I had against doing martial arts in the first place, because it just didn't seem to me to be something that I was really interested in. But even after my very first class, and I was terrified, let me just make that point. For the first 2 years of going into the dojo, I would sit in my car and I would have to talk myself into getting out of my car and going into the dojo because I was terrified. I was so far out of my comfort zone. But for some reason, there was something about being in class, and even after the class was over, knowing that I survived to live another day, that when I was on my way home or going, to work or the rest of my day, I just felt good. I felt good about myself. I felt empowered. I felt like I had just had a lot of fun, which I did most of the time. It was just a feeling that I got. So I think that if that one man had not badgered me twice into testing, who knows? I might still be at the dojo as a white belt. I don't know.
So, okay, how about this? So that man badgering you, did he see your worth, or did he just was curious to see if you can pass?
I think he was probably just bored of looking at me as a white belt.
I mean, white's not too shabby, but you shouldn't wear white after Labor Day.
Exactly, and I didn't have that problem at all. I would wear it all year long.
Oh my gosh.
And it's funny because he and I had gotten to be friends. He was a massage therapist, so I went to him a couple of times for massage. So we got to be pretty good buddies. And bless his heart, he was a green belt at the time, so he was like 4 or 5 levels above me. And so he oftentimes had to work with me. He had to teach me how to roll.
Shoot, even to bless your heart, Stephen. Oh boy. Ooh, 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 ooh.
I know, and I'm not even from the South. But, he had to teach me how to roll, and that must have been the ultimate challenge because I didn't roll. Even as a kid, I never did things like cartwheels and, I could do maybe a somersault, but I have a very strong sense of, self-preservation.
Ah, yes. You would say, I'd rather not do that action so I don't bust my butt on the ground. I'd rather not fall down and be embarrassed in front of everyone else because I can't do it yet.
Well, and they didn't give me a choice because they were making me do it.
I love it.
At that point, I had been, a ballet dancer for over 27 years. So I had the kind of, body and posture that could go backwards, very straight. But I couldn't fold myself into a ball to roll. It was just so embarrassing. And of course, then you had to ki when you're falling. So you got your spirit yell. And it was just so undignified and unladylike. And I thought, I can't do that.
What do you mean undignified and ladylike? You're literally going to a ball and rolling. What do you mean? That is like definition of what young kids like to do.
Well, not when I was a kid, I didn't. Which is really funny because I learned how to ski. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, and I learned how to ski when I was 9 years old. And I was a pretty good skier, but I didn't fall. I hated to fall. In 50 years of skiing, I probably only fell a handful of times because I just hated to fall. And of course, you never fall in ballet class. The only time I fell in ballet class was when I broke my foot.
Yeah.
So falling I just had an aversion to it. But now, I love being on the floor. I love rolling around the floor. And as somebody who is a mature woman, because I am maturing like all of us, so I'm getting, mature. And that's one of the things that helps keep us young and helps keep us flexible.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have a real aversion to even trying to get down on the floor.
Yeah.
Which, I was one of those people. But here I am now, almost 20 years later, and I'm down on the floor every single day, and I'm rolling and falling in the dojo at least 3 days a week.
True. And what was probably the hardest exercise in that dojo?
Oh, boy. The list is long. The list is long. I would have to say pretty much everything. Nothing came naturally to me. And my sensei thought that as a dancer, this is going to be a piece of cake. And it's like, no, I'm not that kind of dancer. I'm a ballet dancer.
Yeah.
It's completely different. So
ballet takes many years to get the form, the one you want. I know a little bit about ballet. It takes years to get the form you need to get to whatever level of performance.
Exactly.
It's rigorous, and a lot of stress factors happen because of it.
Exactly. And you have to have that nice long straight leg. You have to have those toes that are pointed. You have to stand very erect. And these are things that would actually just, kill you in martial arts. And, I had my center of gravity. I mean, I knew where my center was. But all the guys had to do was just walk past me. And, the breeze from them walking past me would knock me over because I was so unstable because my center of gravity was so high. So they kept trying to teach me to lower my center of gravity, which I finally broke down after about 2 years of training. And I took some modern dance classes, which I had never done modern before. So that was another step of getting out of my comfort zone. But what I learned in modern class was really how to get low. So I was able to take that concept into martial arts. And then the other advantage, too, was a lot of the women in class were much younger than me in the modern class. So I would teach them with the choreography that they were doing. It's like, look, this is it's a elbow strike. This is a great way of kicking somebody. This is, if you turn like this, you can turn that into a throw. And so that was really kind of fun for me.
Oh, okay. Have you ever thought about doing a dance routine that also encompasses martial arts with it?
Oh, no, I've never thought of that. No, I'm kidding. Of course I have. I've thought of it many, 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 many times. I've never really done it, except I did start doing something a little unusual for, a person of my age group. When I was 58, I decided to start engaging in more age-appropriate activities, so I started pole dancing.
Oh, okay. Yeah. What's the flexibility of pole dancing come in?
It was actually one of my training partners, her girlfriend was doing pole, and she thought that I should try it. And she just kept, again, badgering me. And I said, you know what, Vanessa, you are so enthralled with the physics behind it. Why don't we take a beginning class together, since we were training together at that point? She was the only other female black belt that we've ever had at the school, and the school's been open for almost 30 years. But she says, if it was just brute strength, I would do it. She says, but there's way too much dancing involved. And so I went by myself, and it was like, she wouldn't, that wasn't in her DNA. She couldn't do the dancing, but she would be able to do the inversions and stuff. So anyhow, to make a long story short, several years ago, it was 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, my pole teacher talked me into competing.
Oh, God.
You have no idea how terrifying that was. I mean, it was terrifying. But I picked a song that was a song, kind of like an empowerment song.
Okay.
And in my routine, which, I choreographed with her help, I had, of course, I had the pole moves in it, and I had a little bit of ballet moves in it, and I definitely had some martial arts moves in it. So it was really pretty cool.
Oh, okay.
So I guess the long answer to your question is yes.
Interesting. So, I didn't think that would be the medium that you practice martial arts and dancing. I didn't really think that would be like your go-to. Yeah, I'm on the pole and I'm all flexible.
Yeah, well, it's amazing how martial arts changes you in many, many ways. I think it makes you more willing to try new things. It makes you more willing to get out of your comfort zone, which I can tell you, getting on that stage and doing a pole routine in a competition, I'm not sure I'll ever do it again. I'm pretty sure I never will. But after that, I was doing, it was about a week later, and I was doing a presentation. I was giving a speech in front of a large, group of people, and it was about martial arts and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And for once, I wasn't nervous at all. Before getting up in front of all those people to give this talk, it's like, I've already put myself so far out of my comfort zone. This is a piece of cake. This is nothing.
The pole dancing prepared you so much.
Yes, it did. And the martial arts training actually prepared me for the pole and to do the pole, the competition.
Oh, yeah. The way I look at it, basically, the pole is a medium that you can still practice the movements and the stances and the evasion techniques, but like you're on one central point. So if you really think the evasion techniques as a way outside of the pole, and the pole is the central point, basically you can use it in a way to go around and then like do moves that could potentially knock them off balance if you use the pole as your momentum.
You are so smart. That's exactly right. And it's so funny. That's one of the things that my friend Vanessa is her name, would tell me, because she would go and she would watch some of the classes, when her girlfriend was taking a class, and she would be all excited. She'd come back to the dojo the next day and say, Cheryl, they do everything that we do. She says, it's the exact same moves, but they're doing them on a static pole. Yeah. We do it, they do it on the static pole and they move. We do it to a moving body, and the moving body moves. She says it's just amazing. So she really, tuned into that physics part right away.
Oh, okay.
But, the thing about the difference between being on the pole and being in the dojo and working with a partner is that your pole doesn't have an ego.
True. You have to beat that ego. You have to keep the driving force on the pole.
That's right. And the pole never has a bad day. The pole didn't have a fight with his girlfriend last night or whatever. So it's just you and the pole. But when you're working with a partner,
oh yeah,
there's two personalities, and you have to. People that you work with, the better you are as a martial artist.
True. What's some of the culture of Kenpo you want people to know about?
I would have to say that probably the main one is that just pops into my head every time I think about it is respect.
Okay.
Respect for the art, respect for your teacher, respect for the dojo, respect for the, your fellow students, and respect for yourself.
Okay.
So I think that is really, that's one of the most, to me, one of the most profound principles, as well as the fact that the ninja never places their sword before their heart. So the sword is the last thing that you draw, and that just means that fighting is the last resort.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a lot of other philosophies too, like, the traits of the characters of the ninja, like commitment and effort and interest in everything in life. And there's several more too that, I could share if you're interested, but...
I'll share if you want.
Well, the other one, there's one called the character of Nin, which is the character, if you look at the shape of the Japanese character, It's actually the character for a sword and a heart.
Oh.
And basically what Nin represents is patience and perseverance. Because in martial arts, as in anything in life, you've got to have both if you want to succeed.
Yeah.
So patience and perseverance.
Patience and perseverance pays off, especially with hard work and a little bit of waiting. You can see what it does, especially with you. You waited 2 years before you got in sync with the dojo and all that stuff.
And the funny thing is, after I did get in sync with it, I started rising through the ranks a little bit faster. And it got to the point where I was even probably at the level of orange belt. Once I got my orange belt, even new students that would come into the dojo would look up to me. And I would wonder why. It's like, why are you looking up to me? And, and you probably know that in martial arts that the senior students or the upper levels teach the lower levels.
Yep.
But even the upper levels are learning from the lower level students because we're learning and teaching each other.
Oh, yeah.
So, so that was a big part of it, starting to use my understanding of movement and starting to, because, I am a physical therapist, I am a dancer, I know how to dissect movement patterns. So once I embraced it and it was like, here I am, I'm obviously not quitting anytime soon.
Yeah.
Still not thinking I'm going to get a black belt. That was never the plan.
Oh, yeah.
But while I was there, I just, at that point, threw myself, body, mind, spirit, and soul into what I was doing.
So because I'm looking at bamboo at the moment, funny enough, what's your opinion on a bamboo shoot that's like a extended pole as a weapon?
That's really interesting. That's so interesting because I studied ballet recently, up until about a year ago, for 5 years with a woman who had a very extensive Tai Chi background.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, you can imagine. It was, she brought everything to, let's say, the bar, the ballet bar.
Yeah.
So she brought all of her knowledge. She had an incredible amount of knowledge, but the Tai Chi part for me was so fascinating as a martial artist. And she used the bamboo sticks a lot. And it's like, okay, explain this bamboo stuff, because I'm not sure. I mean, we weren't beating each other with bamboo sticks in ballet class, even though maybe we'd want to. But the bamboo sticks, she says, it's a living thing. So we had to find our own bamboo sticks. Like, I went to a gardening store, like up in Boulder, Colorado, which is about 30-minute drive from where I am in Denver, and went looking. So you had to find the right size, the right shape, and I bought several of them. And then you had to decide which was going to be the one bamboo stick that was going to be yours. And once you found the stick that really connected with you, and now keep in mind, I'm kind of rolling my eyes as she's telling me all of this stuff. You're crazy, what are you talking about? So once you picked out your stick and you knew which one it was, and then you had to take some rosemary oil.
Oh.
And you had to clean your stick with the rosemary oil, because then that would clear anybody else's energy. It would block any negative energy. Again, I'm rolling my eyes, but I'm doing it anyhow because I figured she knows what she's talking about. And then we would use the stick in ways that we would like walk around class with the stick balanced on our heads. And then once we were able to do that, we would even, do like our pliés and our releves without moving the stick. And would even do like some little dance movements, still balancing the stick on the top of our heads. And it was really crazy how attached I got to this stick, because it was like the stick even knew when I was having a bad day. And it would kind of turn and tilt and twirl and do some really crazy things. So you've got a bamboo stick. Wow. Is that a long one?
It's a pretty long one. It's not like what we say structured, but you can get the feel like bamboo is a really hard wood. So once you have like a really settled wood, it's actually a really great extension of a long weapon to your body.
It's interesting that you say that because sleep with your stick and stuff, and I'm going, between my husband and 3 dogs, I'm not sure there's room for a stick in my bed. But I would, put it under the bed, especially when my husband was uptown traveling. It's like, okay, I've got a weapon here. And I would always take it with me in the car. It was always with me in the car. And anytime I was stressed or feeling a little bit anxious, I would just reach over and touch the stick. And it was like, I've got this Zen moment. And I remember talking to not my sensei, but another one of the black belt instructors. And we were talking one day, and I mentioned bamboo sticks, as weapons or whatever, and he went off on this tangent. Well, the bamboo is too soft, and it's this and it's that, and he's going on. And I said, have you ever played with a bamboo stick, or have you ever used it? And he said, well, no, because of the following, the reasons that he told me. But I'm telling you, looking at that stick in your hands, that thing's a weapon.
Oh yeah.
And the bamboo knows what to do.
Yeah, I mean, even though it's not like culture like you buy from a store, it still does the job. It's dry rotted, so it has the hardness to it. It's not like fresh off the vine. Right.
But yet, according to my ballet teacher, she says, but it is still a living thing.
Yeah.
And she would even have us balance the stick, like, stand in front of it and just put it, in a vertical position.
Yeah.
And eventually, as you're standing there, she says, the stick can feel your energy. Again, I'm going, I'm not sure I buy this, but it eventually would. And here's the funny thing. I stopped taking when the pandemic hit, so we didn't have the classes. And then we did some online classes, and it just kind of wasn't the same. And so finally, I stopped taking from her, and she moved away. Not that it would matter, because there is the internet. So I had my stick, and I had it propped up on the wall, and it was just propped up for about a year. So I hadn't even touched it for about a year. And then a couple of weeks ago, I was like, you know what? I picked it up, and I put it on my head, and it just fell all over the place. I mean, it was a disaster. And I thought, this stick must miss me. So I took the bamboo stick, and I put it right beside my desk. So now I am, using it again, just touching it and being one with the stick. And it's so funny because it's almost like I have a pet stick.
Yeah, instead of a walking stick, you have the bamboo stick.
Exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
My gosh.
Yeah. So if you're, if you want to continue with this philosophy of what she taught me, you might want to get some rosemary oil, some essential oil, and clean your bamboo stick.
I mean, I don't know. It's I probably need a better one. I'm just saying, the bamboo stick here is just been sitting out, so I don't know. It's not the best quality.
Well, and you can see the ones like behind me.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple of the bamboo sticks there, but but the one is across the room against the wall, and it's really funny because we would do certain exercises and patterns, and someday you think about it, this is a ballet class. It's no ballet class I've ever taken before has ever been like this. But when somebody would like reach out and take someone else's stick, our teacher would stop us and say, no. That's Cheryl's stick. It's got her energy on it and her energy in it. And again, at first it was like, you've got to be kidding me. But it just goes to show you how martial arts does change your thinking and change, the way you look at things.
Yeah. And what is one thing you take from Tenpō as a way to instruct yourself in life?
Wow. There's so many things. Again, I don't want to dodge the question, but there are so many things that I do use from it. I would have to say that the primary thing that comes into play most often is something that we call gammon. It's, pardon me, GAMON. And basically it's, they call it poker face, or you don't get rattled when things, go sideways or don't go the way you want or whatever. I call it composure.
Oh, okay.
And it's grace under pressure, because we always have those moments in life where we're in a situation that's like, okay, this is really awkward. I'm very uncomfortable, or somebody said something wrong, or things can go sideways really quickly. And just finding your center, finding your gammon, and pretending like nothing, is amiss. Nothing's wrong. Everything is as it should be. So I would have to say that would be the number one thing that's really helped.
Oh, okay. And what is one thing that keeps your composure alive?
My incomparable stubbornness.
Ah, yes. The fighter's attitude. The warrior code.
Yeah. There's something else. This is one of the don't tell anybody, but this is another one. The deep, dark secrets of the ninja. And it's something that my teacher, Mark, had taught me, and that has really, really helped a lot. Something called controlled rage.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and he sat me down one time, he explained, he says, your emotions you'll always lose if your emotions take over. He says, you need to find a way to take that rage and control it and have it work for you, rather than getting out of control and having it work against you. He says, you will lose every confrontation. So, again, not using the word fight, because confrontations come in every form in life, friends, family, life in general, blah, 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 health issues, finances, everything. He says, if you let your emotions take over, you will lose every time. He says, but if you use that controlled rage. And so that was fascinating, because I actually had to use it a couple of times with him. So, controlled rage.
Oh, okay.
Very valuable.
One thing I take from controlled rage that you mentioned is, like, for me, it's like there is no moment worth being mad. Like, even if I'm mad, it quickly dissipates. I tell people, it's like, well, have a very optimistic view on life. If you're optimistic, then you tend to be less angry or less emotionally unstable.
That's a really good point. I have issues with anger, and I'll fully admit it. I am Eastern European. My father was from Eastern Europe, so, I hold a grudge. And I've had to really learn to let a lot of things go. Yeah. And I realized, I tell people, and I make a joke of it, it's like, don't be angry, because that makes you bitter.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not good for your complexion. So, because your face will reveal, you can tell a bitter person just by looking at them.
Oh, yeah.
And who wants to be that?
You can just tell that the extra wrinkles in the forehead can be an indication of bitterness. Because typically with negative emotions, we use our face a lot more than you think. Because nonverbal communication when you're mad helps a lot. And your face is one big indication of what you're feeling.
Your face is an open book.
Oh, yeah. Especially with me, my looks are all over the place.
Yeah, I have a very expressive face and facial expressions as well. I remember one time my ballet master, who I studied with for a very long time, an elderly gentleman that I just loved and adored. One time, I was talking about something I had to do, and I didn't want to do it, and I had to be in somebody's wedding and as a bridesmaid, and I was 44 years old, and it's like a 44-year-old bridesmaid, really?
Or how about being instead of a bridesmaid, being a bridesman? That's similar.
Yeah, that too. So my ballet master told me, he said, Cheryl, just walk down the aisle looking theatrically serene. And I looked at him and says, Mr. Boyette, my face is an open book. And he actually snickered and said, yes, I know. And I thought, oh, well, okay. I guess you've been reading my facial expressions for years. You would know.
Oh my gosh.
I know, it's funny.
So, you said, let's go back to that smile as a weapon statement. What is a time that you just gave the biggest glare and that it just made people back away from you?
I'd have to say I'm pretty good at it, and I use it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But the time that is most memorable, and it's even on tape.
Oh gosh.
When I was testing for my Randori test. So they call it in our school, they call it the Oreo belt because it looks like an Oreo cookie. It's your introductory black belt level. So it's a black belt. Oh no, this was coming out of Oreo. So it was your first solid black belt level is the Randori test, which is just nothing but a series of random attacks, and you have no idea what's coming at you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like 5 or 6 people who are going to be your attackers, and they take turns attacking you. And, you start with 1 attacker, and then you have to defend yourself against 2, and then against 3. I mean, it's really pretty anxiety-provoking.
Oh, gosh.
But, yeah. Oh, tell me about it. And this was still, we were just one person attacking me at the time. And this one guy in the dojo, he's 6'2", and he was young. He was probably 25 at the time. So he's 6'2", and he had a stick. He had a hanbo, and he was coming at me with a stick, and he was coming really fast, full force. And I just gave him the look, and he actually stopped from the look. I mean, he was coming at me full force, and you can see he just stopped and hesitated for just a second, and then he came at me with the stick. And I reacted, and, I gave a response. Mm-hmm. He actually flew across the mat. He flew across the length of the dojo. His glasses went flying across the floor, and I ended up holding the stick at his throat, and that was a fun moment. And
oh my gosh. Not only did you make him hesitate for a second, but you literally beat the stick on the throat. Oh my gosh. It's like the glare was like predicting what you're going to do before he even did it.
And thank you for saying that, because I never thought of it that way. But, we always talk about in our art that, the intention.
Oh, yeah.
And looking at somebody's eyes to see what their intention is towards you, and vice versa, it's very powerful.
Oh yeah, and like certain masters of the sword, for example, some people just got a very intimidating posture or presence about them, and sometimes you can tell that when someone's very skilled, you can actually tell that they're more skilled than you in a way. Mm-hmm. And you can just tell by the stances and how they conduct themselves. It's more than just face. It's more like what they're looking like. What is their predicting patterns, all of that.
I think what we call it in ours is daikomyo. Mm-hmm. So it's a Japanese word, daikomyo, and I have no idea what the literal translation is.
I think I've heard daikomyo.
Yeah, it's like an aura.
Yeah.
It's like that, your presence, your aura, your spirit, and people can sense your spirit. And that's why, when you asked me if I've ever used, had to use Nenpō in the real world or whatever. Yeah, I use it every day because, especially in a crowded grocery store, you just put that little, that warrior spirit around you, and you just move with confidence. And if it's a crowded aisle, everybody just gets out of your way, and they smile at you too at the same time, because it's not like you're intimidating, but it's just this air of confidence and serenity almost.
True. I mean, if you want, it's like, get out of my way. I'm the queen bee with the cart here.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of the other people do, and it's like, oh, no, don't you use that word queen with me. I'm the queen of the universe.
Well, some people, it's like, oh, no, that's not the version I want to be. I want to be a confident person.
That's right, exactly.
Oh,
exactly.
My gosh. So,
and it's funny because, confidence isn't something that you put on and take off, and I kind of get annoyed. I know there's a couple of life coaches in the area, and they're confidence coaches. They teach women how to be confident, and it's like you stand with your hands on your hips, or you do this, and it's like, that's not embodied confidence. That's kind of a little superficial, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
going to it's not going to carry you through the hard times when you really are in a stressful situation.
True. And also, is still like ability to deliver confidence even when you're not as confident.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, how about this? It's okay to be afraid. That's what that makes you different from everyone else. You're aware of what you're doing, and you should be afraid because what you could be doing is take someone's life.
Mm-hmm. Well, and fear is a really healthy emotion, and there's a reason why we have fear.
Oh yeah, if you're not afraid to go in the battlefield, you're not confident, because if you have fear, you're better than the one that's cocky.
Yeah. And there's actually a book that came out quite a few years ago. It's called The Gift of Fear.
Oh yeah, okay.
And so that's how to use your fear to keep you safe. Whereas, a lot of times, you can have two different ways of like either, not feeling any fear at all. And that's kind of crazy. Any normal person feels fear, or to be locked in fear patterns. Like, with this past 2 years with COVID, everybody was kind of locked in this pattern of fear. And that's not healthy. But to recognize that the fear is telling you something, that you're not safe, that you need to take action, you need to do something to protect yourself or your loved ones or whomever, then it's a good thing. But we just don't want to live in fear. We want to be able to listen to that sound that says, something's not right here.
Yeah. So what is that signature stance in Kenpo that is like the basic of most of the forms?
I think what you're talking about, the katate ichimonji no kamae is what we call it. That's our working stance, and it's very exaggerated, where you're back leaning with more weight on your back leg, and the front leg is extended. And this is the part that I love. And then you have one hand kind of hovering over your heart and the other one extended toward your opponent's heart. Well, that's our starting position. But in reality, in real life, it would be kind of like a forward stance of one leg and your hands up, moving and talking. However, we always start from that exaggerated position. And this is what I love, that when you're standing in that position and you've got your one hand hovering over your heart, that is to protect your heart. And the other hand is pointing towards your opponent's heart, as if to attack his heart. And it took me a few years to realize this. Just came in. It was just this incredible, mental head smacking moment, or maybe this epiphany that I had. It's that, when you can protect your heart, and you have that capability to protect your heart, you can give it more freely.
Oh, okay.
And so that was in kind of like a major life change, that it's like, I can protect it. And not only that, I could attack somebody else's if I wanted to, or if I had to. So that was another lovely philosophy.
So what is like some of the Kenpo's statuses of protecting face? Positive face, neutral face, and negative face?
We really don't talk about that. What we mostly talk about, and this was a philosophy that was hard for me to embrace. Yeah. That a ninja never holds a grudge. I think a ninja never holds a grudge when humiliated or denounced.
Oh, okay.
And I think that we introduced this probably like at the 4th or 5th belt level. I think it's the 4th belt level. And I remember one of the guys I was training with that I got to be pretty, good friends with. And when they were talking about that, and he looked at me and he went, "Yeah, I got a really hard time with that one." And I said, "Yeah, me too. It's something to work on." And he says, "I don't think so. I'm just going to keep it."
True. So, what is one thing you want to reinforce to the audience about Kenpo in general and also martial arts as a whole?
I would say that people, when they hear the word martial arts or the word martial arts, they typically think of fighting, combat, warfare, aggression, and that really isn't it. In martial arts, and I've talked to a lot of different martial artists in different, different art forms, it's more about
the discipline
confidence.
of mindfulness.
Yes, definitely mindset, mindfulness, awareness, being aware not only of yourself and your situation, internally and external environment, everybody around you. And it's just having that sense of control over yourself, over your body. And it's also about lifelong learning.
Oh, okay. And before we wrap up the particular episode today, what is one thing you want to tell the audience about you or anything else that we've talked about?
If you're thinking about maybe trying some martial arts, and if you think that, it's not for you because you're either too old, too small, not fit enough, whatever it is, just step on the mat. Give it a try. Martial arts has been such a life-altering activity for me that it's not even an activity. It is a lifestyle. And you might really surprise yourself how much it can enrich your life in every aspect of it.
And don't forget, when you practice martial arts, it's not about fighting. It's more about preventing, self-discipline, and protecting oneself. And even if some of those are not applicable, it's still the philosophy, like how religion and other things is important as a background. Martial arts itself is a background in itself, in a nutshell.
Absolutely.
And before we leave, where can they find you on social media?
You can go to Facebook, just go to Cheryl Ilov International, and I also have a podcast called the Feminist Ninja Project, so I've got a page for that. It's not about fighting and martial arts and warfare. It's not for women only, it's for men and women, and it's just about overcoming obstacles and finding your ground, standing your voice, human dignity, personal empowerment. So I've got stories like that on the podcast.
Gotcha.
You can go to LinkedIn, again, just Cheryl Ilov. If you can't find me, you're not looking, because I'm pretty much everywhere. I also have 2 books. My first book is Forever Fit and Flexible, Feeling Fabulous at 50 and Beyond, and it includes the principles of martial arts, dance, Pilates, and a few other things to help keep you flexible forever and fit. And the most recent one just was released last week, and that book is called The Reluctant Ninja, How a Middle-Aged Princess Became a Warrior Queen. And both of those are on Amazon, so you could just go to Amazon and look those up.
All right, guys. This wraps up the current episode. Thank you for Miss Ilov here and her expertise in Taipo. Hope it's a beginning good experience for everyone and as enriching as I had with the conversation as well.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.
And don't forget to support MC Anime on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon, and Spotify. And if you want to be a crowdfunding, Patreon, blog MC Anime, that's where you can find me. Thank you guys, and enjoy.
This concludes another episode of MC Anime Podcast. MC Anime Podcast is available on podcast directories like Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. We also have our website at mcanimepodcast.com. If you want to directly support us, then follow Patreon blog MC Anime. Finally, if you want services for hire, then we're available on Fiverr for audio and video production, graphic design, idea consulting, and blog and article writing.